Petrojam's policy was crafted in July 2002, recirculated in 2003, and reformatted in 2006. A limits of authority document was also sanctioned in 2013. This demonstrates, Mr. Speaker, that Petrojam's donation policy predated this administration and the current board. The donation policy declares Petrojam's commitment to developing the community in which the refinery is located, along with the wider community. As an element of its corporate responsibility. The policy declares the organization's commitment to developing its employees and facilitating the involvement of these same employees in community building efforts, knowing they have the strong support of the company in doing so. Mr. Speaker, the donation policy covers support for community development, education and skills training, health institutions, sports and cultural events, and individuals in need of medical assistance, among other things. Mr. Speaker, under the policy, scholarships are provided to assist with the educational development of children, funding of summer job programs, and the funding of work-study programs. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the process, the policy requires a written request and/or proposal from employees or community organizations to be submitted to Petrojam, which may request a range of support from donations, contributions, and advertising for the proposed organizations, providing cash contributions to support fundraising events, as well as donating services, or, for example, products such as computers. Mr. Speaker, the donation policy also requires that all checks drawn on Petrojam's account must never be made payable to individuals. They must be payable to the recipient organization or the provider of the agreed goods and services. Mr. Speaker, I can provide copies of this well-established donation policy at Petrojam if members are interested. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the authorization of the amount of donations, that process is governed by Petrojam's authorization chart, where donation amounts within a certain band are approved, recommended, reviewed, and/or endorsed by officers in designated roles within the organization. Donations above US $2,500 must be approved by the Board of Directors via resolution. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, the 6-member Petrojam board is comprised of 3 Jamaicans and 3 Venezuelans. Mr. Speaker, I have taken the liberty to provide those details to show that Petrojam's donation policy and implementation is serious business, governed by a system of checks and balances, superintended by professionals, and adhering to the guidelines set down in the policy procedure manual governing the activity. Mr. Speaker, allow me to provide this House with further background on Petrojam's donation in furtherance of the policy. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, over 60 donations were made. In 2014 and in 2015, over 50 donations were made in each year. And in 2016, Mr. Speaker, 65 donations were made. Some of the activities that were supported included a project undertaken by the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, Healthcare put on by the Lions Club of New Kingston, Labor Day project undertaken by the Southeast Region Health Authority, scholarship program at the Webster Memorial Church, Hostel Day events at Sir John Golding's Rehabilitation Center, Safety Week activities put on by the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Social Development Commission netball competition, the National Reading Competition. In 2017, Mr. Speaker, donations were made through Petrojam to the Western Region Health Authority, the National Science and Technology Fair, capacity building activities at the Scientific Research Council, and contribution to the national swim team ahead of the Carifta Championships. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, Petrojam dispersed the sum of $39 million in donations to fund projects in 6 demarcated constituencies. Donations were also made to the Amateur Swimming Association of Jamaica, the SDC Commission, and the Secretariat of the University Diabetes Outreach Program. Mr. Speaker, you will agree that the Amateur Swimming Association, SDC, and Diabetes outreach program are certainly, by virtue of their work and the vital services that they provide, cut across boundaries determined by an electoral map. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, donations were also made to entities in 6 constituencies. These 6 constituencies are South Central St. Catherine, of which I am the Member of Parliament, Central St. Mary, Central Westmoreland, South East St. Mary, East Kingston and Port Royal, and South East St. Elizabeth. Mr. Speaker, the record will show that 3 of the benefiting constituencies are led by members on the government side, while the other 3 constituencies are led by members on the opposition side. Mr. Speaker, there is simply no political favor in the benefiting constituencies. Petrojam's donation policy continues to benefit Mr. Speaker. Petrojam's donation policy continues to benefit the country this year. As on May 8, $5,000 was donated to members of the organizing committee of the Jamaica International Invitational Athletics Meet. It is Jamaica International Invitational Athletics Meet. 5 million. Yes. Sorry. It is therefore most unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that the member will seek to devalue the good intent of Petrojam's corporate responsibility program and the work of the entities that have benefited from this support. I believe, therefore, Mr. Speaker, that the members' attempt to discredit this work should be rejected. Mr. Speaker, I conclude by restating that the donations made through Petrojam under this board have followed the guidelines outlined in the donation policy document. I have no need for innuendos, Mr. Speaker, when I can call on the facts at my disposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Paulwell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to, in my 3 minutes, just to emphasize the importance of the institution known as Petrojam and why, Minister, I was disappointed during the Standing Finance Committee when I did raise some issues and they weren't answered. And I know that you have some questions on the order paper, and I'm just wondering if I could treat with everything as one at this stage, rather than coming back to that later on. Because, Mr. Speaker, Petrojam, as the main operating arm of the government, does contribute significantly to the energy sector, but it is in danger of losing its role. Today, the economy saves about 150 million US due to the operations of Petrojam. When, if the upgrade and expansion takes place, it will be saving up to $400 million for the economy. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the government is not moving with diligence to ensure that Petrojam is preserved to continue to contribute to the economy. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, because in less than 2 years, Petrojam is going to lose all its market for heavy fuel oil and diesel that it now sells to the Jamaica Public Service Company. Jamaica Public Service Company has 120 megawatts in Bogue. Used to be diesel, it's now LNG. The 190 megawatt plant in Old Harbor is being transformed, is being created to run on LNG. It is taken out of operations 290 megawatts of capacity that is being today run on heavy fuel oil. And then the Jamaica plant is another 100 megawatts of capacity. So in 2 years' time, over 400 megawatts of capacity that is fueled by either heavy fuel oil and diesel will be lost to Petrojam. I see the closure of Petrojam staring us starkly in the face if something isn't done and done now. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, there are some internal issues that have arisen for which I had indicated to the minister our concerns. Specifically, we're told that there were many staff members who have either been fired or have resigned in disgust. The most recent one, we are told, was the chief finance officer. And Minister, in your response, probably you could explain to us the circumstances of that dismissal and if you were involved in that dismissal. We are also aware that the human resource manager has recently been employed, and there are questions raised in relation to the role and special benefits that have been accrued to her. So later on, I hope you could address that. Mr. Speaker, the arrangement with Venezuela, which is crucial to the operation of Petrojam, is that we have chairmen who alternate. So for 1 year, it's a Jamaican chairman, and then another year, it's a Venezuelan chairman. The minister, I would like to understand, why is it that the Venezuelans are not now in the chair, and why is it a Jamaican? And again, as part of my response, which is subject to further scrutiny when you answer the question. We have been told of this major project that was being done at Petrojam, the establishment of a wall. The creation, the building of a wall, construction of a wall for $100 million. Could the minister explain why there was a need for this wall? Who are the contractors? And it is my understanding that it's a matter that the Contractor General has shown an interest in. And probably you could confirm that and probably indicate how the ministry is cooperating with the Contractor General. There are some other issues, Mr. Speaker, that I want to ask the minister about, but I think those are sufficient to start the ball rolling.
Thank you very much, member. I agree with you as it relates to the displacement as it relates to HFO and diesel in the very near future, and how it will impact the viability of the entity. The member will recall that the refinery upgrade project is a critical bit of work that needs to be concluded to ensure that we not only secure or safeguard our energy security, but also to be able to maintain the viability of the institution by being able to produce a wide range of products, not only for local consumption, but also for export within the region, such as asphalt. And so, remember, the VDU project, which is the first phase of the project, we are currently negotiating with a Chinese entity to pursue the VDU project. It has been a very painstaking task, bearing in mind that last year, February, we signed an agreement with our counterparts, the Venezuelans, at PDVSA, to engage this Chinese entity to proceed with the refinery upgrade, and in particular the first phase of the refinery upgrade, which is the VDU, the vacuum distillation unit. You will also recall that I made a number of presentations to this Honorable House indicating the difficulties that we are experiencing as relates to the level of cooperation from our counterparts in Venezuela. And let me just pause to add, members, that and reiterate that On behalf of the people of Jamaica, the government and people of Jamaica, we are really appreciative of the support that we got from the Venezuelans in the past through the Petro-Caribe agreement. However, as it relates to the current agreement to upgrade the refinery, February 14th of this year, that agreement came to an end without any real support or indication from the Venezuelans for us to move forward with the VDU phase of the refinery upgrade. The member, I'm sure, appreciates the importance of the VDU, especially as it relates to the stipulations coming out from the IMO that states that in 2020, January of 2020, that the specs as it relates to bunker fuel must be of a certain grade that reduces or significantly reduces our carbon footprint and especially sulfur content. And so the VDU project is something that the government is seeking to get up and running in order for us to meet that specification that will come into effect. As it relates to the chairmanship of the entity, the chairmanship of the entity, well, the board of Petrojam consists of 3 persons that are nominated by the government of Jamaica and 3 by the Venezuelans. The chairmanship rotates annually between Jamaica and Venezuela. November of last year, the Venezuelans should have assumed the chair. However, you will recall, Mr. Speaker and this Honorable House, that as a result of the executive order that was issued by the President of the United States in August of last year, Executive Order 13808, even though it was an unintended consequence, we experienced severe hardship as it relates to being able to transact business as Petrojam because of the 49% stake that the Venezuelans currently hold in the entity. And so it became difficult for us to make payments for crude services, please, yeah, disrupt me, man. Services, goods and services, and also for us to be able to collect payments for goods and services as well. And so the Venezuelans opted to give us, for us to retain that chairmanship so as to be able to conduct business. However, if the situation that is before us as it relates to the sanctions is addressed and it doesn't impact us, the chairmanship will then be transferred to the Venezuelans. If they still are a part of the entity, you'll recall that the government of Jamaica made an offer a couple months ago to repurchase their 49% stake in the entity. We are still awaiting a response from the Venezuelans as it relates to the repurchasing. As it relates to the wall, Mr. Speaker, during the upgrading of the Marcus Garvey Drive road, Mr. Speaker, the refinery, the wall of the refinery, the perimeter wall of the refinery had to be replaced. And one can appreciate the security issues, the security concerns relating to the security of the oil refinery with these flammable products on site. And so, as stipulated by the procurement guideline, the entity, through emergency, did the work to upgrade the wall, or to replace the wall, and in fact put in place. I would also, members and Mr. Speaker, if you want to look at the original wall, the perimeter wall of the refinery, and look at the current construct of the Marcus Garvey Drive, you will see that the road is more or less elevated to a level that reduces security of the refinery, and as such, the wall had to be replaced. The OCG, the NCC and OCG requested documents, and the necessary documents were provided to the relevant parties. And of course, well, that is, Mr. Speaker, thank you, House Leader. And this is a matter that will be addressed as well. The fishing village, Mr. Speaker, the Greenwich Farm Fishing Village, which is in the immediate vicinity, exactly beside the refinery. I must bring to the House's attention that in the past, someone was cooking over an open flame was over the fishing village, and it caused a fire to a tank in the past, right over the refinery. I know members are very much affair with the lay of the land as it relates to the proximity of the fishing village to the refinery itself. And so it should not just be seen as just a wall, but the security not only of the refinery, which is critical to our energy security, different sectors. The member mentioned the electricity sector, the transportation sector, and manufacturing sector as well. And so it was imperative that the security of the refinery be maintained. And so the wall was necessary. As it relates to the other matters, I'm going to address them when I answer the questions. The answer to the question, the other matter with the CFO, I will deal with that when I answer the questions, because you have a number of questions for me to answer.
So I just want to understand, you are going to address the questions on the other paper, on the question and answer. So we will deal with those later on. Minister, in relation to donation, and you mentioned about the practice over many years, but don't you think that in an effort to bring greater transparency, the country should know at the start of the year how much money Petrojam is going to be donating, and the categories? No, we didn't do that, but I'm suggesting, to enable, Minister, to enable greater transparency. I'm suggesting that at the start of the financial year, some notification be given as to how much money is available and under what category, because there are some people who know and some people who don't know. I will always refer people to go to Petrojam, because I know that Petrojam has a policy in relation to donations. But there are many of us who inside here do not know, and I really believe that it ought to be done. Minister, I want to go back to the issue of the refinery project, because I don't think you have satisfied us in relation to that VDU project, which now has to start immediately in an effort to get us prepared for 2019, when Petrojam will lose 50% or more of its market, and I believe will have to be closed. I don't think you have set out for us how you intend to achieve that within this time frame.
Member, as it relates to the CSR budget, it is a line item in the entity's budget. I believe that when we are doing the budget presentation and you look at the public bodies component, you will see where it is a line item. And so maybe we need to pay more attention to this particular component of Petrojam's budget as it relates to CSR. Now, Mr. Speaker, the VDU project I think on more than one occasion I have emphasized the importance of this project. In fact, I believe that the technical team comprised of members of Petrojam and PCJ, and we should have had participation from our Venezuelan counterparts. Currently meeting with the EPC contractors to come to an agreement for us to proceed. I'll admit that the delays over the the delays have been costing us, quite a bit of time and money, and we run the risk of not being able to meet the deadline as stipulated by that has been stipulated by the IMO. But we are working feverishly. The money is in place. I must add, the government made an allocation for this year for us to proceed with the VDU project. $100 million US dollars was made available for us to proceed with the VDU project. We also made provision for us to buy back the 49% stake that the Venezuelans currently owned in the refinery. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are very hopeful that the technical team that is negotiating with the EPC contractor will be able to finalize those discussions for us to proceed, Mr. Speaker. Time is against us, and I do hope that we do not, we are not forced to the state where we will have to take some drastic action as it relates to the refinery remain to be, open, Mr. Speaker. As we politically correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Minister, you indicated that there are 6 donations made to school in 6 constituencies. In the interest of further transparency, can you indicate which schools they are and the quantum that were given to each school?
Monroe College got somewhere in the region of $2 million. Homestead Primary, $10 million to construct 2 classrooms, and I must add that the classrooms are up and running. You don't even have to go into the school to see those classrooms. You can stay on the road. Camperdown High School, $6 million. St. Mary Technical High School, around $2 million. $2 million. To retrofit a chemistry lab at St. Mary High School. Technical High School. Blake's Basic School, $1 million. The J Trade, other institutions that I just picked some in 2013, got $10 million as well. The J3As, not school, I just give you a list. I just wanted to give you some more information as to the expanse of I give you no more information. Don't worry yourself. No, that's all right. The National Stadium to repair the swimming pool, $7 million. That was done as well in 2013. The Northeast Regional Health Authority, 1.2. Sponsorship for the purchase of an incubator for the pediatric ward of the Anatomy Hospital.
I'm going to request. Minister,
Philip. Minister, I draw your attention to the latter part of the penultimate page in your presentation. The record will show that 3 of the benefiting constituencies are led by members on the government side, while the other 3 constituencies are led by members on the opposition side. St. Mary Technical, incidentally, is in Southeast St. Mary. So we have 4 constituencies on the government side and 2, in 2017. Okay. Well, you mentioned Central St. Mary, so you need to correct it then. It is Southeast St. Mary.
So that contribution was made when it was a PMP member of parliament. Just to add.
Mr. Bunting. Question, Mr. Bunting, go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, the minister started out by chastising the absent member from Southeast St. Andrew for making allegations without substantiating them. And yes, it was at the start of his statement. And I would like to follow through on the three areas where he made these allegations, but giving some specific information. The first had to do, he spoke about turnover and about junior persons being promoted to senior positions. Well, we've had turnover, Mr. Speaker, since the minister became minister at Petrojam, of the general manager, the CFO, the HR manager, the head of strategic planning, senior engineer, others who I don't even have a comprehensive list here, but that's just to give a sample. Since March 2016. No, not the cabinet at Petrojam. But specifically about junior persons, there is normally, Mr. Speaker, you leave the public sector to go and get higher paying jobs in the private sector. In the case of the HR manager, we see somebody leaving the private sector to go to the public sector at a compensation of 3 or 4 times what they were earning in the private sector, and almost twice what the previous incumbent at Petrojam was earning. So there are specifics, Minister. In terms of donations, the Minister, I believe Homestead High is in your constituency? Homestead Primary and McCook's Pen Community Center. Well, the specifics, we had $19 million. $19 million. Remember, you spoke to $39 million in donations to fund projects in 6 demarcated constituencies in 2017. But 19 plus million, almost half of that amount, is in your specific constituency. And I can give you the specific amounts if you would like.
No, you already have them.
I'm sure you already have them, but he didn't mention them. And in terms of the overruns on the capital projects, you said no specifics have been given. Well, he said no specifics were given. So I'm going to give you some specifics, or let me say projected overruns. On this vacuum distillation unit, a US-based engineering firm did a report, an official report on the estimates of the costs. They concluded that at world open market pricing, this should cost $87.6 million. At Chinese material pricing, it should cost $79.5 million. But the latest estimates, the internal estimates at Petrojam, who are liaising with the Chinese contractors, is the price is now reported at $119 million. And they haven't started yet. And this $119 million has exclusions that could make the final price even higher. So there are some specifics to the allegations that were made, and I would appreciate you responding to them. But just one more before you get up, because I want to make it easy for you.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
The chairman of Petrojam was advanced funds, or let me ask it, put in a question. Was the chairman of Petrojam advanced funds to attend meetings on its behalf in London in February, March this year, earlier this year? Meetings which he didn't show up at. Can the minister say whether those funds were reimbursed to Petrojam? We're now almost in June.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, member. Thank you very much, member. But let me just start by saying that you're continuing on that same part of misinformation. The part of misinformation, and it would appear that you believe that you have the correct information before. So let me just clarify. As it relates to the employment or the firing of persons, as you put it, the Auditor General is currently doing that audit, and you will be provided, I'm sure, with a detailed report. At least, I hope you read it. The matter as it relates to the VDU, you have made a statement as if it's a statement of fact about the VDU. When I answered the member from East Kingston and Port Royal, I was very explicit in saying that we are negotiating. We have not started the VDU. That is the bottleneck in the negotiation. Because the EPC contractor, which was selected or recommended by our Venezuelan counterpart, came up with a particular price. We are currently even doing an additional valuation because of a bilateral agreement that we have with the Mexicans who are experts in this area. They are currently doing a valuation for us as to what would be a true cost, so we can look at all the numbers and come to an agreement. That has been the bottleneck, the actual cost, agreeing at a price. So you are misleading the House as it relates to that Petrojam we are the ones that commissioned the Petrojam was the one that commissioned the valuation.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, a point of order. If the minister says I'm misleading the House, he must say, what is it that I have said that is misleading?
Mr. Speaker, the member.
Doctor, allow Mr. Bunting to state his point of order. Yes, state the point of order.
You did, right?
Yeah.
You're standing on a point of order. What's the point of order?
The minister is alleging that I have misled the House. I'm saying it is not appropriate for him to make a broad statement. He must say specifically, what is it that I have said that is not true, that is not factual?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the member made a statement that we have started the VDU, the construction of the VDU. In fact, we are negotiating. We are negotiating. The member, Mr. Speaker, the member from East Kingston and Port Royal.
One minute, Doctor. Mr. Bunting, please have a seat.
I never made any
Mr. Bunting, you state a point of order, and the minister is
Mr. Speaker, it would appear, Mr. Speaker,
I made no statement that started the VDU.
Mr. Speaker, let me just clarify. Mr. Speaker, it would appear that the member from Central Manchester has in his possession the negotiation, what is taking place at the level of the negotiation. But the impression he wants to give this parliament is that the Petrojam is proceeding with the VDU at a price that is higher than the estimate, while we are negotiating with the EPC contractor. And we are if we are negotiating based on the estimate.
But, Mr. Speaker, frankly, the minister has not responded to the questions I asked. Let me repeat them again. Is it true that one at a time, that the current HR manager, who I understand was also once a PCJ board member appointed by the minister, I think might very well still be the deputy chair of the Spectrum Management Authority, left, was recruited from the private sector to the HR manager's position at Petrojam, earning around a compensation package of around 12 million a year, 3 or 4 times what they were earning in the private sector, and almost twice what the previous incumbent at Petrojam was earning. Is it true or not true?
All I can say is that, Mr. Speaker, allow me to answer the question. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the specifics of the compensation package, I am sure, Mr. Speaker, that there is a band that governs the compensation for all employees. And as I stated before, Mr. Speaker, an audit is being done by the Auditor General. I cannot speak to it. I don't have the information. Mr. Speaker, I don't have that information.
Mr. Bunting, Mr. Bunting.
The second one had to do with donations. Yes. No, Mr. Speaker, we're not having. Okay. All right, Mr. Speaker.
2 questions already. Ask your questions when you get up.
This is a question on donations. In the minister's statement, he said in 2017, Petrojam disbursed the sum of $39 million in donations to fund projects in 6 demarcated constituencies, end quote. And I'm asking the minister to confirm if 19 plus million, almost or approximately 50% of that total was for projects in his constituency, and whether those checks or check was disbursed to the same contractor.
Thank you, member. In 2017, and I must add that the figure $39 million is incorrect. In fact, it's far more than that was dispersed. But I will clarify it.
So you are retracting your own statement made this hour ago?
May I allow to be finished, Mr. Speaker?
Dr. Wheatley,
just do some fact check. I have it right here. Fact check.
Dr. Wheatley, please answer the question.
Because I wanted to ensure that I was able to make a presentation. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, Homestead Primary and Sidlam Community Center benefited. The entities applied without any interference from the minister, if that is what is being implied by the member. The organizations applied, wrote their proposal, the board approved those proposals, the checks were made payable to the institutions, they implemented the projects. As it relates to the same contractor, no, both entities did not use the same contractor. But what I can tell you, all the projects that were funded from this, from those donations were implemented. They are there on the ground, and you can, and the member, if he wishes, I can provide persons. He can go to the school or whichever entity, and you will see the work there. And it is not only my that constituency. Other schools benefited as well. from members in this House benefited.
So I'll take it, Mr. Speaker, that the answer is yes. 50% of the donations made by Petrojam, based on the figures in your statement, went to projects in your constituency. Now the final question, Mr. Speaker, or questions with a number of parts, on the vacuum distillation unit. And I want to pose them in specific questions with subparts, so that there can be no doubt if there are questions. The first question: was an official report of the estimate of the cost for the vacuum distillation unit upgrade conducted by a US-based engineering firm that concluded, one, the world open market pricing estimate would be $87.6 million US dollars. Two, the Chinese material pricing would be $79.5 million. And finally, that the current stage of the negotiations has the pricing at $119 million, with some exclusions which could make the price even higher.
Mr. Speaker, through you to the member, I have not gotten a report as to the details of the negotiation, and but I know for a fact that negotiations are ongoing as we speak.
You know, Mr. Speaker, the minister was asking for specifics.
Mr. Bunting.
You know, Mr. Speaker, you can't come here and chastise the member in his absence for not providing specifics.
Mr. Bunting.
And when specifics are provided,
Mr.
you are
Bunting, do not
evasive.
lecture me. Do not lecture me. And Mr. Bunting, you have asked some questions and the minister have answered them.
I thought I was actually lecturing the minister. But if you want to put yourself in his shoes, Mr. Speaker, so be it. But I certainly wasn't lecturing you. And, you know, for the record, I am supporting Purnell Jr. in the contest. So I don't want you to feel hostile to me. I would like you to treat me as an ally.
Mr. Bunting. Mr. Bunting, you have asked enough questions. No further questions. Mr. Samuda, next item. Mr. Samuda, next item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
No. Announcements, sorry. Have a seat, Mr. Samuda. Announcements.
Mr. Speaker, just to I have to correct. Mr. Speaker, just on a matter of correction. In fact, no, after this.
Have a seat with Dr. Wheatley.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: Annual Report of the Land Administration and Management Program (LAM) for the year 2011-2012. Annual Report and Audited Financial Statements of the Jamaica Urban Transit Company Limited for the year 2014-2015. Certified Appropriation Account for the Revenue Court, Head 2828 for the year 2015-2016.
Bills brought from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I crave your indulgence to facilitate the member, the minister, who wishes to make a clarification on a part of his presentation. He would like to give an explanation as to a particular figure which he quoted, which he would like to correct.
Are you asking for a recommittal of statement by ministers?
I'm asking for an opportunity for the minister to make a clarification.
Just a recommitter.
Well, if you wish.
A reopening of this council.
Order.
So, Mr. Speaker, I ask for your consideration.
Have a seat. Those in favor? Those against? Yes, have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Statement by
Members, I
Minister.
must apologize for the typo. Is in fact.
Statement by Minister, Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to apologize to this House that, in fact, the number is not $39 million in 2017, but over $65 million. It is in line in
Minister,
contributions.
Mr. Speaker.
That is contributions, Mr. Speaker, to
Mr. Martin, wait a minute. Just wait a minute. Let him finish.
contributions, Mr. Speaker. Contributions, donations. As I stated earlier, and I gave the figures for the different years. From 2013 was $50 million, 2014 over $60 million. So the trend over the last 5 to 6 years remain the same in terms of the budget or the amount of allocation.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's only fair, since this clarification or this correction is such a material deviation from what the minister originally stated, that we be allowed to ask a couple follow-up questions. Mr. Speaker, I'd like the minister to just give us, since he has now corrected the figure for the 6 constituencies from 39 to 69, could he just give us a breakdown by constituency of how these funds have been donated by constituency, now that he has the detailed information?
Mr. Speaker, I don't have the detail per constituency as such, but I know the institutions, some institutions. I don't have that at this time, Mr. Speaker, but I'm looking at the figures. It is a broad figure. It was a No. But as relates to institutions, I know I mentioned the Northeast Regional Health Authority, where the Petrojam purchased an incubator for the pediatric ward. Well on. The chemistry lab at St. Mary Technical High, sponsorship of the National Science Fair in the sum of $6 million. YMCA, Kingston YMCA, donation to the YMCA camp, $3 million. National netball competition, $5 million. Manuel College, $2 million.
Mr. Speaker, on the matter that has been recommitted, the statement from the minister, I have a couple of questions. One, you indicated that the $39 million was not correct, and it's a new amount. Given that you have the information at hand that leads to that new cumulative total, could you provide it to members here? That's one question. Question two, Mr. Speaker. My colleague from Central Westmoreland, Manchester, asked the question of the minister regarding the chairman and the reimbursement. I never heard those answers. Could the minister kindly furnish that information?
I don't have that information at hand, but I can check and get back to you. As relates to the chairman and the reimbursement.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for that response. And since the minister will be providing that response, could he also indicate if the chairman resides out of Jamaica and whether or not Petrojam provides for his transportation to attend board meetings when they are so called, and what the amount of those respective costs are? And in his response, indicate how soon it will be furnished to the clerk of the House that we can have it.
Mr. Speaker, the information will be provided at a later date, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, a later date can mean next year. or never? Or when is it? Is it next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Mr. Jackson, the minister must comply with the rules. And he has promised this House to supply the information. He doesn't have it today. I would expect that at the next sitting of the House he will have them.
At the next sitting, Mr. Speaker?
Or as early as possible.
Or
If
before?
the next sitting is tomorrow and he doesn't have it, we expect it as early as next week. Mr. Semudo, bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motion given orally,
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 87, I beg to give notice that not less than 12 days hence, I will move the following motion, which, without question put thereon, be forthwith referred to the Standing Orders Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. The motion is, be it resolved that this Honorable House adopt as the prescribed prayer to be offered at all sittings the following. God of our nation, we lift up to you the people of Jamaica, land we love. We thank you for this place of beauty in which you have formed us. Raise up peaceful hearts, earnest spirits, and tireless hands to be your presence in this world. Bless and approve the words and deeds of this assembly, chosen as representatives of your people. Guided by your way, truth, and light, may we enact just laws, speak compassionate thoughts, and be heralds of your blessed kingdom. Amen.
questions and answers to questions.
Mr. Speaker, today we will have responses to questions from the Minister of Local Government and from the Minister of Science and Technology.
Minister of Local Government.
The time being now 3:22, I ask that the House be permitted to take questions at this time, Mr. Speaker, beyond the time when it is allowed, which is 3:15.
Those in favor? Those against? As of it.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask the Minister of Local
Mr.
Government
Paul.
the following questions listed in my name.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to the questions tabled by the member from East Kingston and Port Royal, Mr. Speaker. Question 1. How many LED lamps have since been installed? LED. By the Jamaica Public Service Company. The JPS has advised that the LED lamps installation for June 27 at the start of the change-out program to March 2018 is at 36,560 under the Smart Streetlight program. The company, Mr. Speaker, has exceeded the original target of 35,000 for the 2017 period An additional 229 lamps were installed by the parish operators for a total of 36,789. Question 2. How many lamps are to be installed and over what time period? JPS has advised that under the SSP program, the full inventory of 105,000 existing lamps will be replaced. The company will be installing 5,000 smart lamps in 2018. JPS will commit to install 50,000 in 2019 if the arrears are substantially cleared in 2018. Letter dated October 13 from JPS, as previously indicated, the projection of 15,000 in 2018. And this, Mr. Speaker, member, needs to be clarified a little more by the JPS. Question 3. What have been the reduction in the Streetlight bill from JPS? Email correspondence dated May 18, 2018, JPS has advised that the net saving over the period calculated as the difference between the actual monthly billing since June, including the lamps, and the average monthly bill replacement is 224,218.74. A corresponding reduction would not necessarily be reflected on the aggregate streetlight bill due to other adjustments, offsets such as interest charges on arrears and fuel charges. Please note that letter dated October 13th, 2017 from JPS has previously indicated that it would be difficult to provide the estimates of the energy and cost saving given the project schedule is not yet completed and fuel costs continue to fluctuate and the mixture of wattage and lamps that will actually be installed is still unfolding, and that the maintenance cycle and warranty performance are yet to be established. 4. How many lamps are currently defective? JPS response: it is not possible to provide the number of lamps currently defective, as there is no system in place to determine that on an ongoing basis. One of the advantages of the smart street lights being installed is the ability to flag when a lamp becomes defective, and this will be the standard feature when the program is fully implemented. In the meantime, JPS continue to repair defective lamps, observe or to bring to those that are brought to the attention of the company, Mr. Speaker, by the necessary avenues, and they will respond based on the availability of resources.
Mr. Speaker, I will start with the last answer. Because I don't think it's acceptable, Minister, that we can't determine how many lamps are not working. I thought there was a project under the HOPE project for youngsters to go and do an audit. People were paid to do this audit. They were in my own constituency. What is the outcome of that project? Because they were to go and count at night those lamps that are not working.
Let me just clarify it was not under the O program, it was under the summer youth employment program that was initiated by the Ministry of Local Government. We do, in fact, member, have some data that has been collected. And I did not want to use that data in this response, because what we are doing is to tallying the data to see what is it we have captured against what JPS has captured. But to say, member, that there is no doubt that there's a significant number of lights that are not working. And I will give you the assurance that once we have completed the data, I will give a reasonable response to the Honorable House on this aspect of the question that was posed. But I'm just responding based on the information provided by the JPS on this leg of the question.
I just wish to say that you shouldn't rely on JPS for their data.
Well, that is why we initiated the program in order to have a clear understanding, because the assessment that was done previously on streetlights was done to ascertain how many streetlights existed in the country, not to determine how many lights were working or not working. And it was under our program that we started that last year, which we hope to continue, because you would appreciate that there are certain sections of the country where there are serious challenges to really do a proper assessment on it. And we will be continuing the program, so we will have a clearer picture as to the amount of lights that are working against those that are not working.
So, Minister, you are saying that in relation to the current project, that the country has saved $240 million approximately.
Based on the response from the Jamaica Public Service Company.
Well, I would prefer if I got the response from the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Local Government, because you pay the bills. And if you are seeing bills reflecting this decrease, that's the answer that I'm seeking, not what JPSCO has told you. Because the aim of the project, when the license was renewed in 2015, the aim was for the price of streetlight to go down by 60% when all of this is done. And it's your responsibility to determine, to make sure that that happens.
While I appreciate what you have just said, but you are also aware that there is a serious deficiency in the whole JPS apparatus involving proper accountability for street lighting, the whole billing process. And this is a part of the ongoing discussions that we have been having with the Jamaica Public Service Company to bring up to standard the existing billing situation and to have a greater understanding and appreciation for how the billing is done and what is the basis on how this billing, the billing is calculated. So, member, you will appreciate that over the years there have been problems, and we are working towards solving those problems. And I am hoping that soon or very soon we'll be in a better position to respond in a more meaningful way to some of the concerns that you have. And as Minister, I am sharing, because I do get the complaints on a daily basis.
What is the current arrears in the debt to the JPSCO for street lights?
The current arrears stand at a little over $5 billion. $5 billion. We have been able over the last 8 weeks to pay close to $3 billion to the Jamaica Public Service Company, with a commitment to pay an additional $200 million around the end of this month into the next month. And we are making the necessary arrangements to pay that $200 million on the account.
Permission to speak from a seat other than my own. Mr. Speaker.
You go ahead, Dr. Brown.
Thank you very much. Just to follow up, Minister, in terms of the discussions, the ongoing discussions with the JPS, I'm hoping that you can give the assurance to the House that at the end of the day, what we are looking for is not for the taxpayers to bear the brunt of the inefficiencies of JPS, but I'm talking in particular about the bills for the streetlights, because I believe it has been extremely unfair for individuals to illegally put up streetlights, whether they sit in the House, whether they are part of the JPS staff itself, illegally, and then the government is asked, the people of Jamaica are asked to pay those bills. I believe that when we settle in terms of what the arrears are, we need to be doing it clear that the JPS had no incentive to provide a system that actually tracks deficient lights, because they were paying whether they were working or not. And that has to come to an end, but it also has to come to an end in the benefit of the people of Jamaica. I hope you can give us that assurance.
Thank you, Member. The member would also appreciate that one of the new initiatives by the Jamaica Public Service Company, which we are going to be working to strengthen that, is that every area where a street light is situated, there's a number that is associated with a pole. It is a complex situation, member, because I don't know that over the years a real proper system of billing has been worked out, and those are a part, as I said before, of the ongoing discussions between the JPS and ourselves. It is going to take some time. It is going to take some effort, and we are committed to ensure that the people of the country get what they deserve in terms of the funds that are spent to provide streetlights.
Mr. Speaker, just to follow up with that, as it relates, the Minister has spoken about the identifying number on the polls. I wanted to ask, how close are we? I know that at the end of the Smart Light program, there will be a way to detect defective lights. But until we get there, there are thousands of lights and several communities, hundreds of communities across the country that are going to be without street lights from time to time. I know that currently it is difficult, taken from the perspective of the public, to report a light, know that it is being fixed, and to get some kind of assurance that it is actually repaired. And I'm wondering if in the meantime, any solution, any method is being looked at to allow for an easy, straightforward, quick access to the public to reporting streetlights that are defective and actually getting a response, because you would know that currently the lights, the councillors, the minister, JPS, and it is really a maze that does not look good if we are talking about good governance.
Thank you, member. The member should be aware that one of the first things this administration did when we recognized the problem that exists with street lights, we have set up 2 direct lines in the Ministry of Local Government. One such line is situated in my office and one in another section of the ministry that takes the call from the public on defective streetlights. We do have a reasonable working program with the Jamaica Public Service Company where we do get a report on the lights that have been reported and a response as to those lights that have been repaired based on the information. Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers here, but yeah, I don't have it here, and I will provide those numbers, because those phones are manned right through the day and we do get calls, and I would encourage members of parliament and the councillors and the wider Jamaica to access the streetlight lines that exist within the Ministry of Local Government for the purpose of reporting malfunctioning streetlights.
Minister, let me thank you for that initiative, but I'm sure you will also agree with me that a system in the minister's office for a responsibility for which councils have can't be the best way to deal with the situation. Granted, it's a quick way. It's a quick way. And so, yes, we want to know, as the member has asked, the total numbers, because it's important. But I'm not looking at the convenience from the minister or the council. I'm really thinking of the public. And I know that when they have a street light that's not functioning, their first point of call is a councillor. Many of them are still calling their councillors. Many of them are still making a report to their councillors. There is no seeming, no apparent joining up of what you are receiving, what the councillors are receiving, how do we tally those, and how do we get back to the person who has made it? Because persons are still, up to last week someone called JPS and they're told, depending on who they get, talk to your councillor. And so I'm still, because remember, you set up a dedicated phone line, which is receiving a certain number of calls, but it cannot reverse what has been a cultural practice for years. So I'm sure there are several individuals who are still not aware or are not accessing that service, and that is the gap that I'm concerned about.
Member, the Jamaica Public Service Company attend all the meetings of the municipal corporation across the island. And at these meetings, they would give reports on the amount of lights. Right, well, based on the complaints, they would reply to the municipalities at their monthly meeting. And the municipalities that I have visited and have observed the deliberations, a significant amount of work has been done to pass on information. I see where you are going. It is a challenge, and it is something that we have to work on to make it more effective and to make it more efficient. It is going to take some time, but at least I believe we have done, there is significant improvement. And I would say improvement starting from when you sat on this side, and we continue. So it is an effort that is going to take the collective response from all of us to ensure that we have a proper streetlight system.
Ms. Daly.
Thank you very much. Minister, I remember at one stage the councillors were asked to look into their various divisions and to see if they could go out, especially in the nights, to see what was working and what was not working. That never worked. I'm wondering if you have any mechanism put in place in order that you will be able to either get somebody employed through the council, since the council have some responsibility, or you are going to request from JPSCO to get someone to give you some accurate counting so that you'll be able to give us an accurate statement when you come.
I don't know if the member was here when I respond to the question posed by the member from East Kingston. The Youth Summer Employment Program that was initiated through the municipal corporation last summer, employing over some 2,000 young people, actually did what each councillor submitted 10 names. And that was on the basis on which we were able to gather the data in almost 90% of the constituencies and divisions across the country. So I did indicate that we have those data, those that we got, that we are working on, and we are working with the JPS to ensure that the data is collaborated.
Motions and answers, sorry. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public.
Mr. Speaker, if I may. Mr. Speaker, you recall I indicated that the Minister of Science and Technology would be answering questions today, and he's prepared to do that now. I ask that you permit him to do so.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, will the Minister for Science, Energy and Technology answer the questions listed under my name?
Minister, before you proceed, I wish at this time to bring to the attention of the House that we have a number of visitors here today, number of teachers and students from the Mile Gully High School in Manchester. I wish you to welcome them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Question number 1. What is the Energy Council? One B, who are the current members of the Energy Council? 1C, what date was the last meeting of the Energy Council? Answer to question 1. The Energy Council was established as an initiative of the previous administration of the PMP, and its last meeting was held on November 20, 2016. From my understanding, the purpose of the Council was to deliberate on and provide a forum for the resolution of issues touching and concerning energy. Its composition consisted of key stakeholders, including both members of the government and opposition, private and public sector entities, non-government and community-based organizations, as well as civil society. Given that with the passage of the Electricity Act of 2015, several of the matters which were being considered by the Council and the attendant recommendations have now been or are being implemented, the current government has opted not to continue with the Council in its current format. In developing the Integrated Resource Plan, the IRP, required by the Electricity Act, this government has continued the consultative approach with key energy stakeholders, which was the intent of the Council. In implementation and further development of the IRP, a similar consultative approach will be applied. Question 2, will the Minister indicate the total staff complement of Petrojam? How many senior managers have resigned or have their contracts terminated since January 2016? As the persons who occupy the position of Chief Financial Officer been terminated recently, what was the basis of this termination? Answers. The historical employment data from 2017 from 2011 to 2017 is as outlined as follows. Year ending March 2011, 200. Year ending March 2012, 221. Year ending March 2013, 241. Year ending March 2014, 251. Year ending March 2016, 253. Year ending March 2016, 243. Year ending March 2017, 243. The total staff complement of Petrojam as at March 2018 is 246. Petrojam 2B, Petrojam, whilst not deliberately singling out any one category of its workforce, as that separations from all categories of the workforce, including senior managers, totaling 39 since January 2016. The opportunities created for development and succession planning have involved not only senior managers, but have included, 39 overall, but have included all levels and categories of the work floor. The opportunities created for development and succession planning have involved not only senior managers, but have included included all levels and categories of the workforce, a learning and development strategy which is closely aligned to Petrojam's mission of achieving best-in-class by 2020. 2C, Petrojam is an industry which places heavy reliance on having a diversified workforce with competencies that not only complements its current operations, but competencies that will enable continuity of operations aligned to strategic foresight. The decision to separate can either be a personal decision or a decision that the organization makes, not from personal biases, but based on measured performance over time and in keeping with its policies. Petrojam terminations are in keeping with the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act of 1975, and the recent separation of the Chief Financial Officer is one such separation. As was alluded to in the previous question, that is for 2D, the separation of individual in that role is currently going through the due process, and I think we can appreciate that it is a kind of confidential matter since being going through the due process.
Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely disappointed with the answer to question 1 on the Energy Council, and I will be taking a motion here for full debate on the matter of the Energy Council, because it is clear that the government doesn't believe in the consultative approach to governing. And this notion that having passed a law, then there's no need to consult in the implementation phase is, I think, unworthy of the minister in terms of a response. I really believe that another look has to be given to this all-important body, and I will take the appropriate resolution here for debate on it. Mr. Speaker, this Energy Council comprises opposition and government and all the various stakeholders. Why would you want to abolish it in the way that has been done? So that is a comment in passing. There's not much more I can add to that. In relation to the questions on Petrojam, first, Minister, are there some legal matters pending in court in relation to staff issues or arbitration in relation to people who have been recently separated?
Member, to the best of my knowledge, I know that the matter relating to the CFO is going through the necessary due process. I do not know of any court matter. But as relates to the first, your comments, the first comment from your member, as relates to the Energy Council, your comment as relates to the government's approach to the whole energy sector and taking a non-consultative approach, I think that's a very disingenuous statement, because I'm sure you are aware that the IRP, which is the roadmap for the development of the electricity sector, and I must say that when we complete the IRP, which it should be completed the end of this month, as a matter of fact, by the end of this week, I should have the IRP in my hand, that for the first time in Jamaica's history, the electricity sector will be developed in a program manner. And the IRP is a result of consultations between different stakeholders, players within the sector, the private sector entities. So, in effect, the IRP, the whole consultative process involved in the generation of the IRP, is more or less doing the job of the Energy Council that you put in place. But as it is right now, we will be using the IRP as a roadmap for the development of the electricity sector.
And just to correct the records, the IRP that you're dealing with has to do with electricity generation, and the demand, future demand for electricity. That can't represent the energy portfolio. That, to me, especially now that we have settled the issue of generation, is a minor part of the energy portfolio. The energy portfolio is much wider. We have to be looking now at the next stage of the technology, when we're going to be able to embrace things like nuclear, issues in relation to rural electrification, because that program, as far as I'm aware, has not continued in the way we were doing. fuel choices and so on. I believe that you are proceeding in the wrong direction in relation to this matter. But again, more anon. I just want to be clear in relation to the staffing issues. I am told that there are 3 matters that are being pursued either through arbitration or through the courts in relation to senior managers who have been terminated. I just want to know if that is the case.
As indicated earlier, member, I can only speak to the matter before us, which is that of the CFO, that is going through the necessary due process. If there are other matters, then I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware. No, I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware.
Minister, you just said that they are going through a process. Right, the chief finance officer. So that is going through the courts. All right, so you're going through the courts. Of the 39 staff members, how many of them were senior staff?
Member, I do not have that information at hand. But as I stated earlier in a previous agenda matter, that a comprehensive audit is being done as relates to the staffing, and additional information I'm sure will be presented at the appropriate time to clarify any issues.
Mr. Daly.
Minister. You want to continue?
Minister, earlier you mentioned the Auditor General being involved in an audit now. Is it going to involve staffing issues as well?
Can you tell the House if the CFO was on contract or he was on filling a post in the ministry, at Petrojam? Hold on, let me finish.
I don't have that information.
Let me finish. You don't have it? The CFO has resigned and is likely to go to court, and you don't ask the board or your chairman something about it? If he was a contracted officer and how much time is left on the contract? Come on, Minister.
But I'm sure that you are aware. I'm sure that you are. I am sure that you are. I am sure that you are aware. Maybe because of the genetic. No, but remember, you must know. I'm sure that the member is
Mr. Speaker, can the minister find out, and when he comes to report on the expenditure from Petrojam, can he tell us? I would like to know if the CFO was on contract or if the CFO was filling a post at Petrojam, established post. If he or she was on contract, I don't know who's the person, I'm just listening to you. How much time was left in the contract, and has it, you said that the LRIDA was followed. I hope you realize exactly what that is, because he has to get, or she get, proper notice. So could you just answer these questions when you come to tell us about the expenditure next time?
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business require
Mr. Speaker,
notice.
you haven't responded to what I said. I've asked you to ask the minister. I made a request. So you have to direct the minister to do it. No, but he has to say, the speaker has to say something. I made a request to you, to this minister through you. So you need to say something, Mr. Speaker.
Questions are asked that you're unable to answer. You will have to provide the House with them at the appropriate time, at an appropriate time.
Mr. Speaker, these vague responses go to what do you want? Mr. Speaker, all due respect to the House, the minister made answer a set of questions, and the member asked a question for which I am interested in the answer, and posed it to you to get a response. The practices in the House that a time frame is given for the minister to provide the answer to the House. It is not an appropriate time and some indefinite answer like that. We can't conduct the business of the House that way, Mr. Speaker.
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister without portfolio and Minister of Agriculture, Industrial Commerce and Agriculture and Fishery will make his contribution today to the sectoral debate, as will the member from Northwest Manchester and the member from Southern Manchester. So at this time I ask you to invite the member from the Minister of State to make his presentation. Minister without portfolio.
Minister Hutchins.
The chip is over there. Different one. Mr. Speaker, having God in your boat doesn't mean you will not face any storm, but it means no storm can sink your boat. When you walk in faith, you will never walk alone. Mr. Speaker, there seems to be a new wave of energy sweeping the agricultural sector in recent times. There are persons requesting lands to go into various agricultural enterprises, the likes I have never seen before. These include both small farmers and large investors. With this heightened interest in agriculture, I say once again, we need to have a structured agricultural sector starting from the base, which is getting farmers organized into groups. Mr. Speaker, before I get into my presentation, a question was asked about the registration of farmers, and the member from Northwest Manchester, sorry he's not here, he was right in his comments. The requirement for the registration of farmers was totally outdated and not in sync with modern-day agricultural practices. What was happening, Mr. Speaker, is that farmers to register with RADA, farmers' organization, had to be registered for 3 months and had minutes for 3 months sent to RADA before they could get any assistance whatsoever. And it is one of those requirements which we have changed. This has been changed, and now an individual has to go to the RADA office, apply to be registered as a farmer, and if he's already cultivating, the extension officer will go and verify the land and have him registered immediately. There are many persons just going into farming and therefore cannot be registered as a farmer because you cannot be identified yet. These persons now would have to prepare the land for planting and have it verified by the extension officer, who would then have that individual registered. They would then be eligible to get the inputs from their members of parliament. At this point in time, anyone who is not registered cannot get anything from their member of parliament. Those who are raising chickens, and these are those from the urban areas, are having a hard time because most of them do not have farmers that are registered. So we are looking at those raising chickens will have to show the extension officer their chicken coop, which should be relatively secure from predators. Then they will be able to get assistance with chicken and chicken feed. These are some of the changes that have been made for the individuals. Farmers' organizations registering with RADA must now have one meeting with a minimum of 15 persons, 3/4 of whom must be registered farmers. It doesn't have to be all 15. 3/4 can be registered farmers. They must send the minutes of the meeting where their officers were elected to RADA office, along with $500 in order to be registered. Mr. Speaker, this is making it much easier for those in the urban areas. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is seen by some as the bastard child of the economy. However, it is internationally recognized that for the economy to grow, agriculture has to grow. Over the years, agriculture has not been given the pride of place in order for it to achieve its full potential. First, there has to be a bipartisan agreement for the structural development of the agricultural sector. Data has shown that placing emphasis on agricultural organizations for the development of the agricultural enterprises has led to exponential growth in the sector. Having others determine the direction and output of these enterprises has at all times brought growth to a halt or even precipitated a decline in the sector. And I just want to say that data is there to prove that. A study by the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, in collaboration with USAID, outlined the structure to be adopted to bring about sustainable growth in our Jamaican agricultural sector. Most developed countries have achieved growth as a result of a structured agricultural base with a central marketing and distribution complex as the hub. Mr. Speaker, agriculture will now have to take a more serious undertaking by stakeholders. Our farmers will now have to take farming as a business. Funds allocated to the sector have to be distributed in a non-partisan manner where there is accountability and transparency for all inputs. There are a number of initiatives that we are taking to enhance the creative minds of persons interested in being agricultural entrepreneurs. And we'll come in to that. Don't worry. Mr. Speaker, we are not only going to forge linkages with hotels, but we'll also be forging linkages with schools. We will once again be focusing on school gardens and a breakfast program in schools. The shadow spokesman on agriculture even pledged $300,000 to the program in his constituency when we visited. A committee consisting of representatives of the Jamaica 4-H clubs, SDC, Parent Teachers Association, RADA, and business people will be established at every school, with RADA spearheading the establishment of these committees as well as the school garden. A member of the Jamaica 4-H clubs will then chair the committee and provide oversight towards sustainability of the project. Mr. Speaker, the breakfast program is one that is close to my heart. And the member from Central Kingston is well aware of the breakfast program started a few years ago in Northwest St. Elizabeth. He even got a template of the structure of the program. With the breakfast program, farmers in the community would assist in providing most of the ingredients, with the rest coming from the school garden, and persons in the value chain with products made from our locally produced raw material. Mr. Speaker, emphasis is being placed on the breakfast program because, as a member from Central Kingston said, 40% of our students, I thought it was 30, but 40% of our students go to school without a proper breakfast. We have found that when provided with a nutritional breakfast, attendance increases and there is a marked improvement in their grades. There are 7 agro-processing incubators in 7 parishes throughout the island. Mr. Speaker, 7 of them in 7 parishes. These incubators should be fully operational by the end of June this year. And we will be encouraging the school committees to utilize these facilities to produce fruit juices and puree from the tons of fruits and vegetables that go to waste every year. We will then be able to provide our children with fruit juice instead of the bag juice. Mr. Speaker, we have developed a concept document outlining the mechanism for the off-budget financing of a crop loss and farm insurance program. No, I didn't. This is just coming now. This is new, brand new. Stakeholder consultation has commenced, and second draft will be available soon. Mr. Speaker, not in this one. Mr. Speaker, 80% of the agricultural lands in Jamaica are in the hands of small farmers with small holdings less than 10 acres. These small farmers are the ones who have been driving the agricultural sector over the years and bringing growth to the economy. Most of these small farmers depend on rainfall for their cultivation. We recognize that the need for climate-smart agriculture, and so we are encouraging our farm communities to identify areas where there can be ponds dug and pond liners installed to harvest rainwater or even channel water from roadways into these ponds where they can be gravity-fed to farms below or pumped to higher elevations. Mr. Speaker, plastic bottles are a nuisance to the environment. I have spoken to the principals of the schools in my constituency to enter a hydroponic competition utilizing these plastic bottles instead of the 4-inch PVC pipes that are presently used in the hydroponic system. Crops such as cabbage, lettuce, scallion, thyme, etc. can be grown in these plastic bottles. The schools with the most creative concepts will be used as a demonstration and the concept used to promote backyard farming. The winning school will be rewarded. In the end of a hurricane, these stands can be moved and therefore secured. Mr. Speaker, very controversial, but there are funds from the Production Incentive Program and the CDF fund in the RADA account for some MPs which stay there for years, and sometimes it's not until election time that the money is spent. Mr. Speaker, I notice that nobody over there is giving a clap. Now what we are saying, end of December last year, over $40 million allocated to MPs was stuck in the RADA office, and these were to assist farmers for flood damage. Mr. Speaker, I am saying our agriculture sector cannot grow in this manner. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the Production Incentive Program, some changes are going to be made to ensure the timely disbursement of the funds so farmers will have access to it in times of need. Mr. Speaker, the Agricultural Push Start Program has started and focuses mainly on youth and women, especially those who find it difficult in embarking on their agricultural careers through their own means. It also assists those who wish to expand their agricultural activities. Irish potato and onion are the two pilot crops for this program. The Agricultural Push Start Program is like a loan program for those who do not have the finances to start their agricultural enterprise. And this program targets mainly the youth and women. Under the Agricultural Push Start Program, all the inputs are provided to the farmer up front. The farmer's input is their sweat equity in the form of land preparation and other field duties, including planting, spraying, reaping, etc. The farmer will in turn sell to a designated purchaser who will make the deductions of the cost of the inputs on behalf of the various input suppliers, or rather, and pay the remaining amount to the farmers, which is their profit. Newport Ferguson and H&L Agro have agreed to be part of this program. Mr. Speaker, innovative initiatives such as the Push Start Program rely on strong partnerships, and I would like to salute all our partners and stakeholders, both from the private as well as the public sector, who are contributing to the success of our endeavors. Mr. Speaker, I wish also to thank and congratulate our farmers' groups who are involved in our import substitution and other agricultural expansion programs. In addition to Irish potato and onion, we are also now pursuing increased production in Scotch bonnet pepper, strawberries, ginger, red peas, and mushrooms. Mr. Speaker, red peas is going to be rotated with crops of Irish potato in the northern section of Manchester and up in Guys Hill. Mushrooms, Mr. Speaker. Just last Friday, I had the distinct pleasure of participating in Propel's Mushroom Stakeholders Meeting held in Kendal, Manchester. Mr. Speaker, the prospects for mushroom cultivation are excellent. Jamaica stands to earn some $41 million and provide much-needed jobs from the development of a vibrant mushroom industry. Since 2007, there has been a steady increase in the importation of mushroom into Jamaica, with concentrated consumption in the resort areas of the island. Data for 2017 states that mushroom imports were 167,000 kilograms, valued at $327,800 US, or as I said, approximately 41 million. I wish to acknowledge and congratulate those groups who have recognized the huge potential in this market and are taking steps towards satisfying a portion of this market. Mushrooms are traded as fresh, canned, and dried across the world, and I have encouraged these organizations to go even further into the value chain, producing other products such as mushroom seasoning, medicinal mushroom products, snacks such as biscuit, chips, candy, powdered mushroom, and cosmetics. Mr. Speaker, the proposal is to have the grow bags in which the mushroom grow produced at UE, UWI, NCU, Case, Ebony Park, and Nakalva. Farmers' organizations would then purchase these grow bags and have their members grow the mushrooms in their communities. We can have 20 or more persons growing mushroom in each community, with each earning a minimum of $30,000 a month. This would be catering to the youth and women. And I wonder if everybody understands, if there was only 3 communities in each constituency throughout the island, we would be looking at employing a minimum of 3,800 persons in this mushroom program. Mr. Speaker, there are large acreages of government land that are not being used because of the lack of access roads or poor road infrastructure. Most of these lands are productive agricultural lands situated in the major producing parishes. The 2 persons now in charge of agriculture portfolio are from the 2 major agricultural producing parishes in the island. And I'm not sure if everybody understands, the 2 major producing parishes are St. Elizabeth and Manchester. St. Elizabeth and Manchester. Mr. Speaker, the constituencies of Northeast Manchester and Northwest St. Elizabeth have been at the mercy of previous PNP administrations as it relates to road works. And I want to say, sit down, and I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I remember it was told by me, by the minister who was in charge of works at the time, a couple of years ago, no funds for roads in Northwest St. Elizabeth, where all other roads were getting help. Mr. Speaker, no, not wrong. Mr. Speaker, in Northwest St. Elizabeth, production was so great at times that farmers had to start planting banana trees in the road. And I am sorry that the member from Eastern Westmoreland is not here. He was one of them who helped to plant banana trees in the road. Mr. Speaker, these two constituencies got no help from Minister of Works then. What is happening now is that these two constituencies have to be playing catch-up to all the other constituencies that were well endowed with funds to assist with roads. I won't say which man, but he knows himself. Mr. Speaker, there is a severe shortage of RADA extension officers. Currently, there is an average of one extension officer to interact with over 1,000 farmers. This is totally unacceptable if we are to provide the technical service needed for farmers to increase production and productivity. The Prime Minister has announced that there will be 1,000 persons employed as agricultural aides through the HOPE program. These will be persons between the ages of 18 and 35 years old. They will be trained, paid a stipend, and be employed for 1 year in the first instance. These agricultural aides will assist the extension officer in carrying out their functions in their respective extension areas. Those functions will include registration of farmers, identifying crops and acreages cultivated by each farmer, assisting with estimating crop damage after a natural disaster, identifying farm families to be put on the PATH program, because what we find now is that there are quite a number of families who are persons to go on the PATH program, but they are not recognized anywhere at all. Assisting in coordinating the breakfast program in schools and so on. The agricultural aides will be deployed in the areas in which they reside. Mr. Speaker, as we move agriculture forward, emphasis will also be placed on those small farmers who have been left behind. To this end, we will be establishing agricultural production zones. These are large areas where there is a concentration of farmers planting various crops. Within these areas, emphasis will be placed on rehabilitation or establishment of a viable farm road network, water harvesting, and technical training of farmers within these areas to increase their productive capacities. We will also be assisting them with inputs through the Agricultural Push Start program. And an agricultural aid will be assigned to each production zone. We have already identified areas in St. Mary, Trelawney, St. Elizabeth, Portland, Manchester, and Clarendon as agricultural zones. Mr. Speaker, some time ago, when I mentioned about chip going into animals to curb larceny, there was someone over that side who took me to task. And eventually, yes. And eventually he decided and called me Chippy. I am sure the gentleman is here and he knows himself. But at that time, no, not Dali, my friend. Dali knows about farming. At that time, he was not aware of the technology that existed, that even now, all of them, this is what was taking on the world, but some of us did not understand the technology. And what we are looking at now, that animals even are now having passport. You are aware of that? And so I am, yes. Mr. Speaker, technology must play a pivotal role in the development of the agricultural sector as a globally competitive and sustainable growth sector. Mr. Speaker, the drone which RADA has recently acquired is a versatile piece of equipment. Who got it? It was when we came to government that we looked at it and got it here. Huh? RADA. It's with RADA. Yes. The drone is capable of identifying the different types of crops, calculating crop damage, identifying nutritional deficiency in plants, the drone, deficiency of water in the soil, identifying plant diseases. If you have a pawpaw tree, you usually find the top of it is usually affected with disease. So, right, personal farmers on the ground are not able to see it. So once you have the drone, it flies over and is able to detect the trees with the disease and be able to get it going. In a matter of hours, even in the most remote areas or areas inaccessible to relief personnel, when we have a natural disaster, it is able to identify these areas. And it also helps in curtailing of pre-larceny. What happened now, and I can give you an example, is that there was one where somebody lost an animal and he was in some bushes and he got a drone and the drone was able to fly around and identify the animal that was in the bush there, and they were able to go and catch it. So the drone is a versatile piece of equipment which is going to be helpful. We are hoping, yes, we saw one of them in a pink tie in the bush. Wrong jungle, they call him, wrong jungle. We are hoping to get one drone for each parish by the end of this fiscal year. These drones will be effective in providing more accurate reports for data gathering. Let me just say right off the bat, I am one who do not believe in the data that comes in. I've always been calling it guesstimate, not even an estimate. The data that comes in is a guesstimate. One so far. And we are going to get one per parish by the end of the fiscal year. So we are moving. With this, with the drones and the agricultural aids, we'll be able to get a more accurate report on all crop cultivation. Mr. Speaker, one of the pitfalls of the system of land distribution to farmers, which we have seen over the years, is that some farmers have leased more land than they can manage, and the land remains idle for many years, and in some cases never used at all for the intended agricultural purpose. In Spring Plain and Ebony Park, these parks, we have many farmers who have leased land, and the land has been lying idle for years. Many of these parcels of land are now being reassigned. Mr. Speaker, going forward, anyone leasing government land will now have to put the land into agricultural production within 6 months, or the lease will be terminated and the land will be reassigned. As we say, use it or lose it. That is it. As I said before, Mr. Speaker, it is amazing to see how many persons, both large investors and small farmers, who are interested in venturing into agriculture. However, most of them express frustration with the length of time it takes to secure a lease agreement for agricultural lands, whether privately owned or government-owned lands. Some people had to wait on their application for over 2 years to lease land belonging to the government, while these lands remain idle during the period. More than that, many of these persons have the finances to start production immediately, yet they have to wait long periods for their lease approval. In other words, they have the finances that they can get the land cleared and everything, but it is being held up. In order to expedite the growth agenda under this government, we are now looking at government lands, and we have decided to take an unconventional approach in having these persons occupy the land before a lease is signed, because we intend to have genuine farmers occupying the land. We intend to have most of these government lands in production by the end of this year. Mr. Speaker, we have been, yes, but this is a problem that we have through National Land Agency, and so that is why we are taking an unconventional way now. Mr. Speaker, we have been working with National Land Agency in a number of parishes, identifying idle government-owned lands. There has been commendable cooperation from the NLA officers, and I must single out those in St. Mary and Portland, who, along with their regional office, regional manager, have been most helpful and, yes, and have even accompanied RADA staff along with farmers to identify these idle lands. Mr. Speaker, the process of putting farmers on these lands started from last year. Once the land is identified and its availability established, the farmer's organization or individual farmer is screened by RADA and permission then given to begin clearing the land for agricultural production. So it's a twist where we are looking to put farmers on the land in the shortest possible time. Mr. Speaker, just a brief synopsis of what has transpired so far. In the parish of Portland, 2 parcels of land totaling some 800 acres were divided mainly into 5-acre lots for small farmers. 102 farmers were put on these lands. All the lots have been cleared and are now in full production without any assistance from the government. All expenses were borne by these small farmers, including many of them fencing their holdings. The leases are now being prepared for these individual farmers. Having that lease in hand will enable the farmer to access funding to further develop his agricultural enterprise or to access concession on the importation